This is the ultimate open chord guide for guitar players. I'm going to break down the 10 chords I use most often. I've got tips and tricks for how I play them, other voicings that I use, ways to make them easier and sound better. Let's dive in. First up is the C chord. Now, I reach my thumb over to mute the low E string, so when I'm strumming, it doesn't ring out. You could also adjust your ring finger slightly and have it do the same job. This is a chord where my thumb is over a little bit instead of the middle of the back of the neck. Watch though, baseball bat gripping the guitar, because that'll mute the high E string and we want it to ring out. If we start to let our fingers get flat a little bit, we'll mute the G string. And so we want to be on the tip tops of our fingers. You can add your pinky on 3rd fret to the thinnest string or the 2nd thinnest string to make some variations on the C chord that sound really nice and I like a lot. One more idea is if we slide it up 2 frets, it plays a really pretty open D chord. It looks like a C because we've moved it. It's a different chord. It's a D. That's not going to work every time you have a D, but when it does, it is wonderful. Let's take a look at the A chord. Just like with the C, I can have my thumb come over and mute the thickest string, so I don't have to be as accurate with my right hand as I strum. If you have really big or wide fingers, consider using fingers 2, 3, and 4. Now, because we can't get every finger as close to the fret as we might want, we are going to have to squeeze a little bit harder than we usually do to get a chord to ring out cleanly. My last thought is when you're ready, try to bar this chord. Meaning, instead of fingers 1, 2, and 3, or 2, 3, and 4, I just lay my first finger across the 3 strings that those fingers would be playing. Now, when I bar this, I am not playing the thinnest string. I actually mute that just a little bit. So it becomes a 4-string chord, the middle 4 strings. Let's talk about the G chord. There's so many ways to play this. We have our weakest 3 fingers, 2, 3, and 4, able to play it, leaving our first finger open. Now I like this way when I'm going to a C, because these 2 fingers are able to move easily between the 2 strings they're on. However, we can also play the G with all 4 fingers, or even just 3 fingers, but using our strongest fingers. And these are also great voicings for G. One thing to watch out for is if you're getting buzzing on this thickest string, you probably need to move your middle finger closer, or in the case of using these fingers, your ring finger closer to the fret to get it to ring out cleanly and clearly. Just bring it closer to the fret or closer to the body of the guitar. One last idea is another way that I like to play this all the time is I'll play this 4-finger version, but I actually won't even use my pointer finger. I'll have the 5th string get muted by the side of my middle finger. Sometimes I find that having that extra note in there, especially all low down, can sound a little dense. And so getting rid of that note can open things up for me sometimes. So I do like that voicing a lot. So this one and this one without the first finger are my favorite. Our next to look at is the E major chord. This is one where we really want to be on the tip tops of our fingers. I mean, like most of the time, but this one, it's really important to make sure that we don't lie flat and get any muted notes. For this one, I am going to bring my thumb kind of to the top of the back of the neck. So I'm a little north of 50%, but I'm not over the top. And this is going to let me get my fingers up on the tip tops a lot more easily. And if we lift up our pointer finger, we just get an E minor chord. So this one's really easy to switch between our major and our minor. Our next chord is going to be D. Now D is a 4-string chord. We don't play string 6 or string 5. If you do play string 5, it will sound okay. Technically it's a note in the chord. The 6th string, not so much. So I do have my thumb over to try to mute that 6th string so that my bigger strums will be okay when I do them. One way to practice this is practice taking your pick and just putting it on the 4th string and strumming, putting it on the 4th string and strumming to help you get used to what it feels like to hit the 4th string and not hit the 5th string. Next, let's look at our E minor chord. I like to have my thumb sort of a little north of the middle of the back of the neck, but not over, because it keeps my palm away from that thinnest string when I'm playing it. Also, I like to use my middle and ring finger, although you can also use index and middle. If we're changing to a G chord using all 4 fingers, it's it's really nice to be using these first two for our E minor. If I'm going to a C chord, having my index finger free helps me make that transition. The next chord is an A minor chord. A great way to think of this is thinking about our E major chord, just moving it one string towards the ground. Now we don't want to play the sixth or thickest string, so I do mute that with my my thumb, so that I can strum it and make it, big sounding. Now, if I lift up my ring finger while I'm holding this A minor chord, I play an A minor 7, which can be a really pretty chord depending on the context. Another cool note to add to this chord, which also makes it an A minor 7, is adding my pinky finger on 3rd fret of the thinnest string. D minor, I think, is the weirdest of all the chords we've done so far. So when we play D minor, we have to remember, just like D, it's a 4-string chord. The A is kind of okay to play, ideally not, so I'm going to roll my thumb over to mute that thickest string. Take your time with this one. Because it's not similar to any of our other chords, it's going to take a little bit to learn and to get your fingers used to doing it. This is a great one to spend some time doing a grab and release. So what I do is I like to grab the chord, strum it, make sure it sounds good. Again, really targeting that 4th string with my right hand so I'm not hitting strings I don't want to. Then I'm going to let it go, and then I'm going to imagine where my fingers go, think about setting them down, and then imagine what it sounds like when I play it. And then I'm actually going to grab it and play it again, and continue to do that in a loop until I feel really confident with the chord and I can start switching to some new chords. I would say going to a C chord is going to be our easiest because we have our first finger just moving one string over. And I would use that as a target finger when I practice, where I would strum this D minor, I'd lift up my fingers, target that index finger of the C chord, and then land on it. Next, we're going to tackle the F chord. So the way that I approach this is I want to think of it like an E chord. Let me help you get there. I'm going to start by playing my E major chord. Then instead of fingers 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to use fingers 2, 3, and 4. And my first finger is free. So I'm strumming my E. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all 3 fingers 1 fret towards the body of the guitar, and I'm going to lay my first finger across it. And then that's going to let me bar that F chord. Now, I don't love playing bar chords. I know them, I had to learn them. Every guitar player goes through it, but I want to give you an awesome way that you can play the F chord that is beautiful and easier than the bar. So, start with a C chord. That's right, C. And then we're going to put our pinky down on 3rd fret of the 4th string. And that becomes an F sus2 major 7. It sounds like, a computer-generated password, but man, is it a pretty chord. And if you have big enough thumbs, you can actually roll your thumb over the neck of the guitar and put it on 1st fret of the thickest string to give it an even more full sound. The last chord we're going to talk about is B minor. So we would start by playing an A minor chord and doing the same thing we did on the F when we were coming from the E. So we're going to use fingers 2, 3, and 4 to play that A minor. This time we're going to slide up towards the body of the guitar 2 frets and then just lay our first finger down across 2nd fret all the way to the 5th string. When I'm playing this B minor, I'm using the tip of that first finger to mute the 6th string because I only want to play strings 5 through 1. The other thing is, notice that you only have to bar strings 5 and 1. So I really arch that finger and make sure that I'm putting pressure on the outside. I don't have to squeeze down all 5 because these other 3 fingers are playing those middle strings. Another thing on these bar chords is make sure that you're not squeezing as hard as you can just from this little muscle here trying to push. You're going to tire yourself out really, really quickly. I want you to think about having your arm up, dropping it on the guitar, and that weight pulling back on the guitar, and I'm pushing the other way with this, so it's like I'm trying to break the guitar in half on my body. Don't push so hard that you do that. We'll let you get those clean bar chords with less effort. Now, I don't want to fool you. Bar chords are difficult. They're not the most comfortable. I just told you on the F chord, I'm trying to avoid them most of the time. I'd prefer to play something else. But when you need them, you want to have them in your toolbox. And this weight and pressure is the best way to get them clean without killing your left hand. I hope these tips with these chords help you make more music. I know how frustrating it can be to play the right chord, but somehow it just doesn't sound right in the song we're playing. Now, if you're ready to start learning a few songs and putting these chords into practice, this next video is going to be perfect for you.